Hello everyone, my name is Will. I'm a private music teacher and I'd like to share my music tips and tricks. Alright, so we've talked about a lot of things thus far. We've talked about breathing, we've talked about drills, we've talked about how to make drills fit into your music. We've even just been talking about all kinds of things. So today what I think we should talk about is practicing. All of us know that practice makes perfect, but not all of us know how to practice to make perfect. So what I want to do is I want to give you a few things you can do to make sure you're utilizing your practice time correctly. The first thing I want to say is that when you practice, you should perform through what you're practicing once, at least once when you begin. This way, you kind of get a general feel as to what you're having a hard time with, what you're not having a hard time with. So while you're performing this one time, you need to be very subjective with what you're doing. If you make a mistake, you need to make a mental mark of it. If you find that you're slowing down, you need to make a mental mark of it. Alright, so after you've practiced performing the piece one time, you're then going to go back to where you had your mistakes, and you're going to really work on the hard part, those mistakes. You can do this in several ways. One thing that I find helps a lot is to find the last mistake you make in the piece and work backwards. What this does, it helps you view the piece as music itself, so you're working on specifically words or notes or melody line. But you're not doing the whole piece. So you're actually able to focus in on that one spot and correct it. After you've corrected it, you're going to go back a couple measures and then go all the way through. If everything is going fine, go back a little bit more and go all the way through. Once you know that you're good through that part, you can go on to the next spot. Another thing that you can do, instead of picking the last spot and moving backwards, is you can actually pick the first spot and move forwards. The thing that works with this type of practice is that you get a better feel of how the flow of the song will go at the end. The problem is the temptation to continue through the piece without actually fixing the actual problem is very, very strong when you start at the beginning. So make sure if you're going to start at the very first thing you had a problem with, that you only work on that and then move to the next thing you have a problem with. Don't perform all the way through. Alright, so after you've worked on everything in a song, what do you do then? Well, then you have to, as I said before, perform the song all the way through again to make sure that you have it down pat. Now, here's the question I pose to you. How long do you think this process will take? Minutes? Hours? Days? Well, this is what I would say. This process should take days, and the reason being is if it's a longer piece, it'll take days. You should only practice about an hour a day on what you're working on, and that's really asking a lot. I know a lot of my students right now are very young. They don't have that attention span, so I only really push them to practice 15 minutes for 5 days a week. The important thing to gather with this is that you're doing it on a daily basis. So to fix something or to get better at something, working at it piece by piece every single day makes you better than working on it a lot during one day. It's much easier to forget information when we try to cram it in last minute on one day than it is when we try to do a little bit every single day. Again, if 15 minutes a day is minimal, and it's really good if you're a beginner and you're just starting out. As you get more and more advanced, you perform more and more, you're going to want to spend more time on practicing and probably go from 5 days to 7 days a week. Alright. The next thing that I would say about practicing is you have to decide what kind of practicing you're doing. So the first type of practicing that we were talking about is literally just practicing to be a better musician. So we're practicing to master a piece, to learn a technique. The second type that I tell my students you have to be aware of is practicing to perform. Now the difference is when you're practicing to perform, you've already got the piece down, or pieces down, correct? Right. 2, you're now practicing how you're going to behave and how you're going to actually perform the song in front of people. This is very important because what can't happen during a performance is you cannot go back. You cannot stop a song and redo a part you messed up. You can't let everyone know that you made a mistake. you can't let everyone know that you're having a hard time during a spot. So that's where performance practice becomes super important. And the way that this is done is really you're just going to perform the song, but I would perform it either in front of a computer with a video so you can see what you're doing. You can perform it in front of a mirror, or you can just perform it in front of friends and family. The whole point is to get used to performing the song. Pay attention to your mannerisms if you're watching yourself in a mirror or computer. If you make this face or that kind of face, you just let everyone know that you made a mistake. At the same time, if you're making this intense face and everything sounds great, you've let us know that this is quite difficult. So it just depends on what you're trying to say while you're performing. A lot of people don't realize that as a vocalist or an instrumentalist, your body language is part of your performance. So if you're sending off a signal saying, this is difficult, I can't do it, I just made a mistake, we all read that as part of the performance that you're doing. Alright, so we've covered practicing to learn and become a better musician, and performance practice. So what's the last thing we need to do? Well, the last thing you need to do when you practice is to make sure you recap everything. One of the things I've learned as a teacher is this method of I'm going to teach you something, then I'm going to teach it to you, and then I'm going to remind you what I taught you. Now, the reason why I do that is because it really reinforces everything. What I find is if you don't recap everything, so that just means go through everything, make mental notes of what you've done, what you expect next time you practice, or even what you want to do when you perform this piece. What happens is if you don't do that, you kind of lose part of what you worked on, and you have to start by going back a little bit and then moving forward. Just by taking at least 5 minutes, looking over everything you did, making mental notes, you save yourself a lot of time. You end up not having to backtrack, and it ends up being a really good thing. So, where do drills, warm-ups, and warm-downs come in on this? Well, really simple. Before you actually start practicing, spend a couple minutes warming up. Make sure your body is ready to work on music. Drills. Drills are what you're using to correct some of your problems. So drills will fall into that working on spots, trying to get things better. And warm downs. Warm downs are necessary if you're working on things for a long period of time, so if you actually go to that hour, or if you work on things that are very difficult, like singing a high note, like really trying to project. We just want to make sure to stretch those muscles and just relax our throat a little bit afterward to make sure that everything's okay. But again, this only takes a couple minutes at the end of your practice. So I hope this really helps open up your thought process on how you practice and be more aware of how to effectively use your time. If you have any questions, make sure to write them in the comments section. Feel free to like, share, and please subscribe, and you guys have a great week.